As the public spending squeeze starts to tighten around education budgets, the government is starting to look closely at the cost to the taxpayer of teachers' pay and pensions. So what exactly lies in store for teachers' salaries over the next few years, and what sort of deal can they expect when they retire?
For teachers particularly, it's not desperately good because we've had a real pay cut for the last 2 years anyway.
Pay is cut. If pensions are attacked, will people still want to come into teaching?
The government announced in the June 2010 austerity budget a 2-year pay freeze for all public sector staff earning over £21,000 a year. This will take effect from April 2011 until April 2013. Public sector workers earning under the £21,000 level will get a flat rate pay rise of £250 in each of the next 2 years. However, teachers will get the final part of the increase recommended by the pay review body, worth 2.3% from September 2010. Teachers were getting the third tranche of the pay review body, 2.3% from September 2010. What impact is that going to have? Does that mean there's going to be some differences across the staff in schools in terms of pay increases?
Yes. I mean, there often are. I mean, that's not unusual because we have a different system for administrative support or teaching assistants who are working paid on a local authority scale will get a local authority rise or no rise as the case may be, whereas teachers are paid according to rises through the teachers' pay review body. So there will be differences and it will be differences across the country as well because different local authorities will react in different ways.
In staff rooms like this one at Bishop Challoner School in East London, the news on pay hasn't gone down too well with either teachers or classroom assistants. What's your response to the fact that we've just heard that public sector pay is going to be frozen for at least 2 years, and that would obviously include teachers' pay?
Well, I'm obviously not very positive, but we were kind of aware that it was going to come. It didn't come as a particular surprise, and I think for teachers particularly, it's not desperately good because we've had a real pay cut for the last 2 years anyway.
And I mean, generally, what do you think about the effect on morale of teachers if you know there's no pay rise for the next 2 years?
Some teachers, the morale has gone down because it's put a huge dent to some of them. I've got to admit that because some teachers work really hard to getting their training, the qualifications they need, and when it comes to that sort of news, it's definitely set them back big time.
The teachers' unions are planning how they can resist what will amount to a pay freeze from September 2011, when the current pay review body award comes to an end. What about the argument that, in the state of our current finances, that it's really a choice between constraint on pay or losing jobs?
Well, I think the issue has to be what is the long-term impact on the education service. So if pay is cut, if pensions are attacked, will people still want to come into teaching? What would be the impact of there being fewer teachers? Well, obviously a worse education service.
But the pay freeze isn't the whole story on salaries. The government has made clear its desire to move away from the current system of nationally set pay and conditions. Teachers are currently paid according to a national pay scale, which rewards experience and extra responsibilities. So apart from allowances to cover the extra costs of living in and around London, it's the same rate for the job across the country. However, academies are already free to vary national pay and conditions. And with many more schools showing interest in academy status, the government would like general reform of what it calls the rigid national pay and conditions rules, so schools can both pay good teachers more and deal with poor performance. So what does the evidence from academies show so far about the impact of this local freedom to vary pay and conditions?
I don't think there's any evidence that academies are paying less. I think what they do is they pay differently, maybe slightly more, and incentivise teachers that do well to get the best out of them. So I don't think it's about paying less, it's about looking at freedoms that enable you to do a better job for the children that are coming to the school.
Clearly, as a union, for our members, we're very, very clear that the national benchmark of pay scales needs to be retained. Flexibilities are already in place for the best teachers to be paid more if a school wanted to do so. Now, those flexibilities aren't currently being used, and the principal reason for that, apart from the question of fairness, is the question of funding. How do you afford to pay the best teachers more without having consequently to pay other teachers who may be very good teachers less?
For many workers in the public sector, there's an almost unspoken belief that their relatively modest levels of pay are counterbalanced by secure final salary pension schemes. But with such pension schemes disappearing fast in the private sector, the government has just set up a review to look at the future of public sector pensions. In his June 2010 budget, the Chancellor launched a pensions review to report by Budget Day 2011. Its task is to recommend reforms that are sustainable and affordable in the long term. And significantly, he said the review should have regard to the growing disparity between public and private sector pensions. Now, the government's announced a review of public sector pensions, including teachers' pensions. What sort of a threat is that to teachers' pensions?
Well, we see it as a significant potential threat, and it's a threat that we're going to work very hard to avert in cooperation with the other teacher unions, with the TUC and with the rest of the public sector union movement.
The government also announced a significant change to the way public sector pensions are increased in line with inflation. Currently they're aligned to the Retail Prices Index, but in future rises will be in line with another inflation measure, the Consumer Prices Index. The latter doesn't include housing costs, and it generally runs at a lower level than the RPI. So the government has said that it's moving an indexation of pensions from the Retail Prices Index to the Consumer Prices Index. What effect will that have on teachers?
Over the last 10 years, there's been roughly a 10% difference between the RPI and the CPI. We can foresee this continuing for the future. Now, a pensioner retiring on £10,000 a year this year, over the course of a 25-year retirement, will lose almost £50,000 and will end up with a pension that's several £1,000s a year lower than it would be had the RPI been maintained. It's going to hit existing pensioners, and it's going to hit those who are yet to retire. And we see it as a breach of that promise to protect accrued rights.
Think about your number bonds.
The teachers' pension scheme is a final salary scheme, where the pension amount is based on salary levels at or near the end of the working career. Teachers pay 6.4% of their pay into the scheme, and employers contribute 14.1%. But there's no actual investment fund, as this is a pay-as-you-go scheme, where contributions from working teachers pay the pensions of retired staff. Currently, payments to retired staff exceed contributions from working teachers. That's why the government is looking to make savings. As part of your decision to go into teaching, how important is pay and pensions as part of your decision?
Well, pensions, it's, again, it's that security that you know that, okay, you're working hard, you're doing your job, it's just the idea of knowing that there will be some safeguarding at the end of it.
As a professional, teaching professional, we need to safeguard our collective bargaining powers. And as has already been mentioned, to me, a real serious concern is our pension. It's something that, as a safeguard for your professional career, you want. Something I can see my colleagues when they retire, they've got the benefits of the pension because you're not saving a lot of money, so that pension is something we need to look after.
The government has confirmed that any pension benefits already earned by teachers, the so-called accrued benefits, will not be affected. However, future pension arrangements look likely to change as the government seeks to reduce public spending. In the next episode of Need to Know, I'll be examining the new government's flagship free schools policy.
We allow lawyers to set up legal practices, we allow GPs to set up surgeries, we don't allow teachers to set up schools.
And I visit a school still under construction in North London, which is one of the first in the country to be initiated by a group of parents.